The most common question I get as a priest now is something along the lines of, Father Richard, what's the hardest thing about being a priest? So if I was to ask you this question, you could think maybe in your mind some guesses. You could hear the Jeopardy music, dun, 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 dun. What is loneliness? Incorrect. As shared yesterday, I've received a lot of healing from the wound of abandonment, so I really know that God is with me at all times, and I've really healed from that. Another common idea, what is busyness? Incorrect. I love being a priest. I love everything about being a priest. In the words of Nacho Libre, it is the best. Another one, what is hopelessness? Ding, 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 correct. You probably listened to my homily last evening, so you are right. Yeah, the answer, the hardest thing I find about being a priest right now is a sense of hopelessness. When I think about the state of the church, how many people have left the church, as well as how aggressively against the church the culture is, there's a sense of hopelessness, not for myself, but for how many people could be eternally separated from God. And that has a real weight on me. And I'm not alone in a feeling of hopelessness. Dr. Bob Schutz, he calls it a wound of hopelessness. And this wound of hopelessness goes way back to the Garden of Eden. Simply put, when Adam and Eve sinned, they cut themselves off from God. And God is the source of all genuine and lasting hope. And so when Adam and Eve sinned, they experienced this wound of hopelessness because all that they saw for their future was now sickness and death. And all of us as children of Adam and Eve have experienced this wound of hopelessness in various ways. There are people here, and with great reverence, I want to honor the experiences of hopelessness that they've had by naming them. So some people here have experienced big wounds of hopelessness. One will be the death of a loved one. The wound is, will I ever see this person again? For others, it's the heartbreak of divorce. You feel hopeless about the future of your family. Some, it's terminal cancer. The diagnosis makes you feel hopeless for your future. These are all big wounds that some people here have experienced. And all of us, myself included, have experienced many small wounds of hopelessness on a daily basis. For some, it's unanswered prayers. The heartbreak of many mothers, children have left the faith. Or a loss of purpose in life. Maybe you've recently retired or you've lost your job and you really feel like, what is the purpose of my life? And that can really create a sense of hopelessness. Or the big one today, the fear of sickness and death. That is the number one fear that's driving the craziness of the response to the COVID pandemic, is a fear of sickness and death. It really exposes the wound of hopelessness because the fear that drives it is, if I get sick and die, my life is over. And that is a response to the wound of hopelessness. Now, to explain the ways that we can respond, the common ways that we react to this wound of hopelessness, I want to put this all within the context of my favorite game that I play with my nieces. What is hide and go seek? Correct. The common way that we respond to the wound of hopelessness is to hide. Just as Adam hid from God in the Garden of Eden, we hide from God as well. We hide from God by avoiding prayer. We avoid silence because we're afraid of what we might hear deep down inside if we're truly silent and in touch with our hearts. We can also hide from going to confession because to expose the wound that we have deep down inside for some people is too much. So we avoid those experiences. But the response of hiding from God, it does not provide any real healing from the wound of hopelessness. In fact, what happens when you have a wound that doesn't get healed, it gets infected. There's a saying, wounded people wound people. Wounded people wound people. And so when we hide from God, and God calls us out, we first react by getting defensive and blaming other people. That's a very common way that we react to the wound of hopelessness. Just as Adam blamed Eve for the whole mess, we blame others. We play the blame game. How easy it is to blame politicians, blame Dr. Bonnie Henry, blame family members, blame, blame, blame. The blame game is so popular today, but what's underneath that is a fear of this wound of hopelessness. That's what's driving the blame game. Or, when we're done with the blame game, we fall into despair. We just want to give up trying. So we don't want to get out of bed in the morning. We just want to press snooze because our future doesn't seem that hopeful for the day. That's one little reaction that we can have on a daily basis. Or we can just want to numb the wound of hopelessness. We want to numb it through addictive behaviors. And think about the addictions that we can so easily have. And trust me, as I point a finger at you, right, there's 3 pointing back at me. I'm preaching from experience here, okay? Now, if you want a really good visual of what it actually looks like when we allow the wound of hopelessness to get infected, we turn to today's gospel, King Herod. Here's a man who hid from God. He hides in his palace. And when the wise men come to him and present a real king is about to come, Herod feels exposed. This is the puppet king. Herod's not a real king. He's taken the throne by killing other people, and suddenly he feels hopeless. That here's this king that's going to expose him. And so what does he do? If you read the story, the history of King Herod, he pretty much kills anyone in his sight, including all the infants in Bethlehem, hoping, in a real perverted way, to not be exposed. That is a wounded person who wounds other people. And if you want real motive to not hide and allow these behaviors to infect the wound of hopelessness, you can read the history from Eusebius about how King Herod died. Pretty much he had this internal infection with worms that ate him to death. It's kind of the summary of it. Now, on the other hand, okay, gross. Move on, Father Richard. Okay. The wise men in today's gospel provide a fantastic example of how we can find healing with the wound of hopelessness. These wise men are playing a game of hide and go seek with God. That's the only answer I have to why these men left the comfortable life in Mesopotamia, living the luxurious life, and walked for over 200 hours. Through treacherous conditions, 1,000 kilometers from Mesopotamia to Bethlehem. The only reason, these guys were like little children. They were playing a game of hide and go seek with God. First clue, they say his star. Not just any star, it's his star. It's like God himself is giving us a little sign, and he's calling us to play a game. And so it brought them on to an adventure. Second clue, when they go to King Herod, the Old Testament prophecy. That's where we can find him. Let's go. You just picture them like giving each other high fives, like we're gonna find him. And Jesus up there in heaven just kind of giddy and laughing like, you're getting closer. And by the end of their journey, how do we know that these are true children? What's their response when they finally find Jesus? Overwhelmed with joy. So, my question for all of you today, are you hiding from Jesus or are you seeking him? Because if you're hiding, like King Herod, and like I did for most of my life, the wound of hopelessness will continue to get infected. And you will be a wounded person who continues to wound people. If we're honest, though, the real question is, where am I hiding from Jesus? That's the real question that we have to ask ourselves. Because if you were to invite Jesus right now into your home with a game of hide and go seek, what are the rooms that you would not want him to go into? Maybe it's really comfortable. Okay, I can invite Jesus into the living room. That's kind of cool. But my bedroom, that door's locked. I'll let you fill in the blanks of what I'm talking about. Or maybe in my prayer space in my home, cool. Jesus, let's play there. But when everyone else goes to sleep and I'm in my room, no, Jesus is not allowed there. Trust me, I still have daily experiences of hiding from Jesus. When I see the lack of response of people even showing up to church, it's hard for me to be honest with Jesus about what's really happening in my heart. And it's easy for me to want to just numb the pain and move on and not really care about all of these people who are separated from God. It's easier for me just to say, all right, I'm just not going to be involved, and I'm just going to cut off my heart, and I'm just going to immerse myself in busyness and do my own thing and not really care about how many people are separated from God right now. It's easy for me to hide. And so this morning, I just had to ask the question, okay, Jesus, like, where am I hiding from you right now? Like, what are the rooms in my heart that I'm hiding? All this being said, there's really, really good news. Because Jesus loves finding you. Jesus is seeking you. Jesus loves to leave the 99 and seek the one. Jesus is relentless. And all you have to do is cry out. Let yourself be found by him. For some people here, you have to cry out by literally going to confession. If you are in a state of mortal sin that you have not confessed, you have to go to confession. If you die in a state of mortal sin, you're eternally separated from God. Go to confession. I was in a state of mortal sin for like 6 years. Trust me, I'm preaching from experience. For others, you just have to cry out to God in prayer. God, like, where am I hiding from you right now? Find me in this place. And then the joy is when you allow yourself to be found by him, then the game switches, right? Jesus is the one hiding, and you go seek him now. That's the beauty of the game. And that's where real healing happens. Because Jesus said before he went up to heaven, it's good that I go away. And then he says, seek, and you shall find. And so when we passionately seek Jesus like little children, that's where real healing happens. And we'll start to become aware of little clues that Jesus gives us to keep seeking him. Last time I played hide and go seek with my nieces, I had a really good hiding spot, and they could not find me. And so I could hear they were about to give up, and that'd make little sounds. My little sound for them is Roadrunner from Looney Tunes. So just meep, meep. And then it'd be like, I think I heard him. And then they would get closer, silent. Meep, meep. And then, oh, I think he's over there. When you're seeking Jesus, you're aware of the little signs. You actually love being silent and finding the little signs that he gives you to keep seeking him. You become aware that each of us have unique signs. For some people, like I know, a sunshine. That's a sign of God drawing them closer. Another person I know, it's an eagle. Whenever he sees an eagle, there's something in his heart that just like, that's my sign from God. Whatever it might be, that's for you to discover by playing a game with Jesus. You don't read about it in a book. You don't discover the joy of hide and go seek by reading it in the dictionary. You got to play the game. And when you play the game, you become aware. Like for myself, why is Jesus so hidden in the Eucharist? He's playing a game of hide and go seek with me. The great news of playing hide and go seek with Jesus is that one day you'll get him. One day, if I persevere, I will get to see Jesus face to face. And the game of hide and go seek is over. And I'll finally say, I've got you. And I will be overwhelmed with joy for eternity. The wound of hopelessness will be fully healed because I will be Jesus and he will be mine forever. And I can't wait to go to heaven. I can't wait to go to heaven. Speaking about heaven starts to fill my heart up with joy. Until then, for all those who want to be engaged in the game of hide and go seek, for all those who, me, sign me up, you get to find joy every day in seeking Jesus. That's where our true joy is found.